Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Pre-Hospital Paradigm Podcast. I'm Scott Wildenheim. We got the usual host here, Dr. Hill. And across from me, I've got two of our own aeromedical program providers with me. I got Kyle Schnarrs, who's our flight nurse with UH AirMed, which is our university hospital's aeromedical program. And I got Nathan Brazytis, who's a flight paramedic, also a nurse.
Yes, sir.
But practicing on the aircraft in the medic role.
Correct.
Why? Let's just real quick while we have that. We actually have two nurses sitting across from us. But why don't you do nursing on the aircraft yet? I want to prove a point with this, right? That's
yeah. Actually, I kind of followed the career path of two of our nurses who currently work, one in Middlefield, one in Medina, who did exactly that. They worked as a flight paramedic, went back to school, they got their RN.
Right.
But then it is required per CAMES standards and also many of the program standards to get outside experience. And It has to be either in critical care or in a critical section of like the emergency room.
Right.
And the hours vary wildly between the programs, but you have to receive some kind of external training experience before you get crossed over.
Yeah, that's and so you're a nurse, and then you just passed NP school. What's next in that space for you personally?
Ooh.
Just let's talk about you guys first, and then we'll talk about aeromedical stuff
totally.
here.
So I just finished my adult gerontology acute care nurse practitioner. Yeah. Passed boards last Wednesday.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Big deal.
And right now I'm just sending everything into the state and getting that all squared away, get DEA licenses and NPI licenses and all that fun stuff. So, all the exciting things before kind of doing a little bit of searching for something to do.
Yeah. So with all of the regulatory stuff, maybe in a year you'll be doing something in that space.
Yeah, by the time they give you all the credentialing and everything, it's
right.
months down the road. So
guys, thanks so much for hopping on here. We've they don't know, but we've played hell trying to get a team on here between our schedules and your schedules, and we tried to do a thing yesterday. We actually were going to go out to the air base, and lo and behold, and we knew it was a bad plan to begin with. We called the shot on it, and of course, they got a call, and we're down the road and out the.
Yep.
Not at the station. So
three times the charm.
Right.
This is our third attempt at it. We finally did it. So.
We're going to get done. So what we wanted to kind of do is just talk about all things in the aeromedical space, right? Maybe there's a couple things on the list here that there may be some misconceptions and some stuff that we want to kind of clean up and talk both about what aeromedical across programs, right? Just in general, what the aeromedical piece is, and then some more finite things here as we get into interfacing with interfacing with departments and whether it's scene flights or whatnot, and then ultimately. Kind of, if somebody's interested in doing it, there's some, obviously it's from the pre-hospital care perspective of things. It's generally considered the tip of the spear, right? So there's clearly a lot of people that have aspirations on flying. So let's just kind of start there as your own individual experiences. How did you get here to be the rotorcraft provider? Just your own personal, just to give an example of career paths that landed you here.
Start us off. It's all you.
All right. So
he's like, I've been waiting for this the whole time.
I was just interested in it very early. My EMT instructor, then my paramedic instructor, worked for the base I now work at.
Oh, that's
and
it.
I kind of, if you look at it, I took over his spot when he retired.
Oh, you took over Mark's spot?
I did.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
That was kind of an open spot that was formed. I came in with the new company, but that was an open spot that was kind of formed by him.
That's cool. I didn't know that
so.
Piece. That's a cool tieback.
Yeah, but he got me in very early. I was able to do a ride day with it was medevac at the time.
Sure.
But I did it in my paramedic program. And then I came back every year. And so I followed pretty much a lot of the traditional kind of EMT paramedic route. I first met Scott. I started working for the ambulance companies that we worked for. I worked there as an EMT. I worked there as a paramedic. After that, I went to the emergency room while I was finishing my fire school. And then I did full-time fire for 2 years. And then I came back up to Cleveland. I worked for the EMS department.
Yeah.
That was for about 3 years, I believe. And then the spot opened up at Middlefield. So I came to Middlefield as a flight paramedic.
Did you have your eye on that the whole time, or was it just convenient timing at that point in your career? You had enough of the back end experience. You're like, I'm going for it now. Or?
Yeah, it was a combination of both. At the time, I was a new dad, and we were working the 3/12 schedule.
Right.
And so I'm like, if I go to the 24s, it'll a little bit more family time,
Sure.
And it enables you to work at a higher level as well.
Yeah.
So to kind of broaden that scope out, I was looking for that.
And I think a lot of your colleagues in the paramedic slot have a pretty similar story, right?
Yeah.
They had a wide array of experience, and they brought that to the
Right.
Brought that to the team, right? And I think most programs have a very similar cross section in the medic slot.
I think so.
Now about the nursing slot.
Yeah, so
That's completely foreign to me, right?
Yeah.
Not being a nurse, but how does how does your nursing career go from what you were classically trained in to I'm going to wind up on a rotorcraft or a fixed wing craft? Yeah.
So really, the whole time this was kind of my goal.
Awesome.
So I started out in high school. Actually, I'll go back even to middle school. I wanted to be a nurse. My dad was a nurse, or he is a nurse, I should say, and kind of influenced me. Hey, I want to be a nurse. So in high school, I went to the trade school, and they had in Trimble County they had a program called Health Science Academy, and it was basically prepping pre-nursing, pharmacy technician, all that sort of thing. So when we were in high school, we got our pharmacy tech and our state tested nurse.
Oh, really?
In high school.
That's cool.
So while I was there, I remember doing this project, and this teacher said, "I need you guys to write a paper on what you want to do in the future." I was like, "I don't know what I want to do." So she's like, "Look around the room for inspiration."
I still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah, right. So I'm looking around the room, and I see this picture on the wall, and it's a picture of a flight crew in the back of a helicopter. And I was like, "That's awesome! I want to do that."
I want to do that.
And ever since I saw that picture, that was like kind of what I was dead set on. So went to nursing school, knew that's what I wanted to do, and I kind of started talking to people, seeing what you needed to get into to really, to get into it, and started playing around. And UH caught my eye. Started out in the cardiac ICU, and I remember walking into that interview, and they had a shadow day, and I walked in the ICU, and there was this kid Mike that was one of the nurses, and I was shouting him around. And there's these two patients with all kinds of drains and art lines, and as a new grad nurse, you're like, this is terrifying.
Right.
And my first thought was, yep, I'm scared. Let's do this because I need to get out of my comfort zone.
Right.
So I jumped into that, and while I was doing that, I just started pounding away on certifications and trying to get as much experience as I could. I went to Pennsylvania, got a pre-hospital registered nurse certification to be able to do some EMS out there, and did that while I was working in the ICU. I was driving 2 hours out to work 12-hour EMS shifts while I was working in the ICU, and then I went to the ER, got some ER experience, and had the opportunity to get onto our
ground team, right? That's where we first met.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, and got some really good experience there. Worked with some great people, and opportunity popped up to fly, and I jumped right on it. So
like, this is where I was heading all along.
Absolutely.
So you've got familial history of medicine. Are you the standout?
Yeah.
It seems like 50-50 when I ask that question.
Sure.
Is some people are like, no, I'm it. Nobody else does medicine in my family.
Yeah, I came from landscape construction. It was.
I see
When I went to EMT school, I didn't know what a BVM was.
Sure.
I didn't know how to put on a nasal cannula. Yeah. I didn't watch medical shows.
It was all foreign. Yeah.
It was all foreign.
Well, you still wanted to do something in landscaping. You just wanted to observe it from a higher altitude. That's all, right? So, well, So always fun to hear the how we got here, how we got here kind of things, and even reflect on some of our own. We've certainly talked about our what got us, how we landed where we landed individually. But so let's talk about like what the normal day is. So you already kind of, and this is at our program, understand that programs vary. I think the 24-hour model that you referred to is pretty ubiquitous. I'm sure there's some 12-hour programs out there, but
yeah, I would say.
But
probably for the most part, most of them are
most of them are 24 hour, 24-hour shifts, right?
Yeah.
What's that average day look like for you as far as you come to work? What do? You just crash on the couch and wait for a call to come in, right?
Well, it depends.
On a good weather day.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
No, first thing we're doing, we come in the morning. Everybody, our shift started either 6:30 or 7, so come in. The former crew's there. They're waiting for you to come in, eager in case there's a call.
Right.
And so we get in there and we're doing drug exchanges, making sure we do drug counts on all our narcotics and that sort of thing. Make sure we have all our equipment ready. Going through our stuff, we'll brief over maybe calls that they did. Maybe we can learn from that sort of thing. Maybe we can just kind of, talk to them if they need some support with a call or something like that.
Sure.
Or, just to kind of go over things that happened the day before and kind of helps each other kind of get over things, debrief, and feel good about ourselves.
You're always learning from each other.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like the first thing you do, you walk in the door, hey, how'd your shift go? Did you have anything interesting?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole culture of, especially I find in this kind of like advanced medicine
Critical care
type
space,
type space. It's, hey, we had this yesterday. Have you ever had this happen to the ventilator? Have you ever had a patient on Impella that's done this? Have you ever seen somebody react to something this way?
This way, right?
And it's just that constant learning process, and that stuff gets passed down in a week. Somebody will have a call where something happened. By the end of the week, all the crews know about it.
The whole
Everybody
team knows, yeah.
Yep.
For good or for bad, everybody knows what goes on there, and it's a learning culture and a very interesting, like a self-critique culture, because it's not unusual to come in the morning and be talking to the crew, and they'll say, we had this patient, this happened, and we should have done this, we should have done that, we should have. Everybody's very, I mean, obviously, when you're practicing medicine like that, there's some egos involved,
right.
But by and large, it is, this is what I should have done.
Yeah.
And it sticks in their head, it sticks in your head, and it's a really important part of just growing.
Yeah, I think being humble is the biggest thing with that for sure.
It's no different than the ER. Same thing happens to us.
Oh, yeah.
So if one weird thing happens, we all know about it.
We all know about it immediately.
Yep.
Yeah. But that ability to self-reflect and that that's hard for a lot of people, right? And I think maybe if we think back to some people who didn't do well in the critical care space, as some that were maybe unable to do that, as somebody's out there like, hey, what should I be working on, me personally? That's a big deal, right? That's being able to be humble and be like, no, I screwed the pooch on that one.
Absolutely.
And what am I going to take away from it, right? And we talk, you and I and the rest of the group, in various forms, talk about things like that throughout this whole series. So
so after we're finished with that, like as Kyle said, we do our drug counts. We make sure all of our, especially our narcotics, are accounted for, and then we get that crew out the door, and then we say what we really were thinking. No, we in all seriousness, we
sure
make sure we everybody gets out the door with their car keys, and then our shift begins. So
we'll once we get all that squared away, we'll go out to the aircraft and we check through all our stuff, real thorough with checking our bags, that sort of thing. It's huge preparation, making sure you're prepared for all your calls, have all your equipment you need, make sure the batteries are charged on all your equipment, just making sure that all that's good. If the aircraft's in the hangar, we may help the pilot. We use a really strict system with pulling the aircraft in and out of the hangar as far as having spotters to make sure that we're not running into things.
Right.
I mean, those aircraft, how much are those blades? They're they're insanely expensive.
You know, you're touching on one quick point there. I just want to quickly talk about, and then get back to this kind of day of thing. But you know, people that if they don't spend any time at an airbase, you know, they don't realize that, you know, you can't fly the helicopter in the hangar, right?
Yep.
It has to be landed on something, towed in, towed out.
Oh yeah.
And that may get built into getting the, you know, if you get a call and you actually have the aircraft in the hangar because it was a marginal weather day or something like that, you know, it takes a minute to tug that out, and there's not somebody that does that.
Yeah.
The three of you, the pilots, depending on the program, and the medical crew are responsible for getting that aircraft out
totally.
and getting it on the road, if you will, or getting in the air. But
Right, especially in the cold weather months with snow.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no keeping the car outside the garage and then trying to scrape it off with a credit card. You keep that thing as dry and as warm as you can, so
yeah.
it's ready to go.
And there's not a lot of leaving it or run it periodically to keep it warm either.
Yeah, right.
That's an expensive proposition. But then what, you know, let's talk about, I touched on the pilot there a little bit, so let's talk about your all relationship with the pilot, and what do, you know, how does that crew come together, and what do you guys do throughout the day to make sure that you're mission ready and safe?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in the air medical programs, the pilots are limited to 12-hour shifts.
Correct.
They can max out, I believe, at 14
hours, right?
and that's it. They can't fly after that. So you have, in a standard day, you work with two pilots. You work with your day pilot, you work with your night pilot. And so typically, you know, due to the schedule, you know who's there in the morning, you know who's coming in at night. The pilots are just like us. They are kind of on the top of the food chain, very good at what they do. Everybody has a slightly different personality, and you learn that personality and you work with it. You know, some require a lot more, I wouldn't say attention than others, but others, some interact a lot with us. Others, they more spend that time for their studying. So they're studying for their certifications, their renewals, their furthering their education. So we kind of run basically on a parallel schedule, but also intersecting throughout the day. Starting with, we have a morning brief, and that's where it starts, and that's where the tone gets set. We sit down as the crew of three, and we go through the weather conditions for the day. We go through, like yesterday, there was a report that we were going to have a lot of migratory birds. So that was part of the brief of, like, we're going to have a lot of migratory birds. We're going to keep our eyes out for birds. We go over weights, fuel.
Oxygen in the aircraft.
Yeah, oxygen in the aircraft. Because especially with the weather, too, they'll be able to say, hey, we won't be able to fly to Youngstown. There is weather over Youngstown. But Portage is clear. Up near the lake is clear.
Yeah, we can.
Or it could be the reverse. They'll say Cleveland's fogged over right now. If we pick up a trauma scene, we'll have to take them to a trauma center in Akron, or we'll have to go to Youngstown.
Right.
But we're not going to be able to get to Cleveland right now. So that's always like I said, the morning brief kind of sets the tone for the whole day.
With yesterday's weather, those might not have been migratory birds. That just might have been the front blowing them across.
Right. Supposedly, like, overnight, there was, let me see, it was
14,000 extra birds in the air.
it was enough to show up on radar.
Oh, really?
They were tracking them, coming
so
out.
those weren't storms. Those were just migratory
Yeah,
birds.
pretty wild.
Yeah.
Definitely wild. Our briefs, though, they're excellent. They're super important. Our pilots are all fantastic, and they're really good at what they do, and they're really enthusiastic with what they do. So listening to them talk to us about things, and be able to explain that stuff to us, and then we can kind of pick their brains on stuff too. So, hey, we heard you talking about a vortex ring state. What does that mean? Or settling with power, like, you know, like the normal person wouldn't know what any of that means, but like we get to pick their brains on that stuff. So then we're learning all this crazy terminology and all these crazy things that they're doing that we never would have thought of in a million years. And So it's cool to have that perspective on things, and then you see it in person while you're up there with them flying. And
Right.
It's just a cool experience.
Yeah, because we have all this clinical expertise that to many of us is just second nature. It's what we've trained and we spend our time.
Yeah.
They've done the same thing in their specialty, and it's that intersection. It's
absolutely.
really cool. Right. How did both of you kind of adapt to living and working in the aircraft? I mean, it's a different beast.
Yeah.
I would even start with, because I've gotten this question from my colleagues too about understanding, like, well, the aircraft was there, why'd they go by ground? Like, you don't want to fit a Lucas and try to do CPR in the aircraft. So start with how big of a space you actually have and how you're basically sitting on each other's laps, if not the patient's lap.
Yeah. The space is that we work in the back of the aircraft is probably the size of this table.
The table, right.
And ironically, about the same shape. This being the tail and that being the head.
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically big enough to fit two people, the cot, and the equipment.
So even this spacing
Yeah.
left to right with the
And it's
the
a small
console here.
It is a
that's about
smaller
right.
It's a smaller cot than you'll see in most squads in the way of how high it is off of the deck, how narrow it is.
Our tunnel space is only to put someone in the back. I actually just had to measure it last week because we had a call with a patient we weren't sure was going to fit, and our tunnel space from the top of the cot, from the pad to the ceiling, is only 14 inches. So
they gotta fit through.
Yeah, so they got to fit through the tunnel.
And the tunnel you're talking about is like all the transmission and all the working
Correct.
parts of the.
So there's all kind of electrical up in there,
Yep.
all their wiring. They have pieces of the engine, pieces of the transmission, that sort of thing are all up in there. So there's no moving that. That's
Right.
all stuck there.
Because you guys load from the rear of the aircraft.
Yeah,
right?
so we
Correct.
load from
You
the
got
back.
you got a rear clamshell.
Yep.
Yeah. Your program flies EC 135s.
Yeah,
Correct.
we fly P2 pluses. So
But yeah, you slide them through that tunnel. And the avionics bay is what we call it, is right above the patient. And so they go right through that, and it's low for about 36 inches.
Oh, yeah.
And then it opens up into the actual cabin of the aircraft. And their lower extremities from about the thighs down remain in that bay area.
In that 14.
So we always take that into account, that if we need to do something with the
on
legs,
lower extremities, yeah.
if we need to evaluate something on the lower extremities, it needs to be buttoned up before they go in.
yeah,
And the way you load the aircraft is program and aircraft dependent, right? So
Correct.
we were talking about our rear loading clamshell stuff, but other programs fly different
yeah.
variations of helicopters that might be side loading. Or
Yeah, we have a new Orient with us now who came from a different program.
Yeah.
And she was just talking about it yesterday. That
Ooh.
yeah,
Oh, perfect example. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. She was just talking about they fly in a 130.
130,
where
right.
she came from. And those 130s, they don't use a cot, they use a stretcher, and they're all side loaded. So whenever they get to a hospital, they have to move the stretcher in and out. And on top of that, if they're on a scene, they have to have extra crew to help them
Carry it. Yeah.
Or if they're at the hospital, they have to bring out one of those emergency department stretchers and move that cot onto the emergency department stretcher. It's
And the
For those,
patient's legs are like right next to the
pilot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
In that orientation, right? Yeah.
between
So
those
those
and
who
the
are
A-stars.
not familiar with some of the terms we're using for the aircraft, the stretcher versus a cot, we use a stretcher. It's a Furno stretcher with fold-down legs.
Wheels.
We
yep.
bring our own wheels. Aircraft like the EC-130, which is used in southern Ohio, it looks like a backboard. It's a backboard with a locking mechanism.
yeah.
So it's like if you would have to carry your patients to the back of the squad every single time on a backboard, put them in the squad. Then when you get to the hospital, you have to go get a hospital bed, pull it out to your ambulance, and put the patient on that hospital bed. That's what the difference is, and that's why we're very fortunate with the 135. We don't have to wait for that. We got wheels. They're not the biggest wheels in the world, but they do the job, and they get us in the hospital, and they get us across fields, and provides a.
They might stick in the mud on occasion.
I'm about to say, I think on your one of your scene runs, you did more carrying than you did rolling when you played that back for us.
Yeah, well, got to carry it through the ditch.
Yeah.
Just pass them over the ditch, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then there's other programs in this region that fly even a little bit larger aircraft, and they're side loading.
A regular Furno cot, yeah.
a full stretcher on the side load. So
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes to know what's in your space, right?
Yeah.
Who's coming is going to dictate some stuff, right? Are they going to need a bunch of extra help getting to the aircraft? And,
Right.
Totally.
And
In this area of Northeast Ohio, every helicopter I could think of that services this area has a system with wheels.
Yeah.
So it's nice because it's kind of uniform. Like I said, you go to Southern Ohio, and it's not unusual to be landing at a hospital, and there's a staff member with a bed,
right.
because they are very used to you coming out with what resembles to be a backboard.
Right,
And
yeah.
you need somewhere to put it.
Wheel past. Hi guys, what are you doing?
You need to put it somewhere.
Right.
So they got a bed waiting for you. So like I said, here in Northeast Ohio, it's relatively uniform. Everybody got wheels of some make or type.
But part of our area is actually Eastern Ohio, and they do stat medevac for a lot of call-outs too.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I don't know what they fly.
135.
Yeah, they're in a 135.
Oh,
They
wow.
fly a lot of P2 pluses and a lot of T3s. So yeah,
Very
very
similar.
similar aircraft
Very
to
similar,
ours.
yeah.
Very similar setup.
Yeah, same cot. Like I said, bring their own wheels. So
Crew configurations are the same. So yeah.
So you're in the back of the aircraft. You're working in a fairly tight environment, and one person is usually sitting at the head of the patient, like we're accustomed to in an ambulance,
Yes.
right? There's the airway seat, right? The other person, where do they generally sit?
Yeah. So depends on how your aircraft's set up too, and that's dependent on your program.
Sure.
Our program, we have 2 rear-facing seats. Some programs run with 3 seats. Some run with 2. As far as ours go, like I said, we have 2 rear-facing. Some other programs that run with just 2 seats, like us, may have a forward-facing seat that's next to the patient. And then the ones that run with 3 seats, they have the 2 rear-facing and a forward-facing. And just depends on what your program's ideal configuration is for, whether loading patients or loading equipment, or really just
What you're
depends on-
carrying, how
yeah.
you're carrying it will
Yeah.
make sense
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah,
either way, as long as you have average length arms, you could pretty much reach a patient from any seat in that helicopter.
But then how does
if
Kyle
so-
do it?
Yeah, right.
It's
He sits on the
Can't
seat
get it.
closest. He's the
Yeah,
airway.
right.
He's the airway guy, so he's close with his short arms.
Yeah, right.
yeah, it's tight enough that any seat is the best seat in the house, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And as far as all the gear and stuff that's in there, let's contrast what you all have to do as far as preparation to lift off and with a patient, as far as stowing gear and stuff. You got a whole different rule set than we do in the ambulance, where we're lazy. We probably left the cardiac monitor on the hook on the back of the cot, or the oxygen bottles between the patient's legs, or some other thing we should probably not do. But
Yeah, so
a little
we're-
bit different in your space, right?
We're pretty bound to FAA regulations.
right.
That's
what I-
huge. The Federal Aviation Administration really sets strict guidelines as to how we put stuff, where we put stuff. And along with that, we can get into CAIM standards too, where some of the CAIM standards require certain things as well. And we have specific mounts that are made for equipment that we're supposed to put them in when we're in all phases of flight. We have specific ways we're supposed to tie down our bags, and if we have, let's say we're taking a balloon pump, how we're going to hook that balloon pump and secure it in there so it's not going to move around.
Right.
So everything's got a special place in that aircraft.
And then we have weight and balance issues, which is the aircraft are very weight sensitive. You just can't walk in the back and say, there's a bag, it maybe weighs 50 pounds.
Right.
I'm just going to throw it here.
Here, right.
And the way where the bags are and how they're tied down is set into a iPad program for the pilots. They need to know where everybody's sitting. They need to know where the bags are. The balloon pump that we carry is weighed in, and when it sits in a certain place, and they click in and say, that's where it's sitting.
That's where it's at.
If a patient has, a heavy bag, personal bag, you just can't toss it in the tail like you would a squad. You got to walk it around, put it into the seat next to the pilot, strap that thing down, because You just can't put anything anywhere in a
Yeah,
helicopter
right,
because
right.
of the whole, that thing is sitting there balancing in the air.
That's a perfect analogy, right? It's not like a fixed wing aircraft where you constantly have
Right.
lift, right? You're making your lift as you go,
Yeah.
and they have to understand and solve for all of that.
I mean, we could even get to the point that really we weigh in every so often.
Right.
And they have our weights in the computer system too.
Updated monthly.
Yeah. If you don't weigh in, they add an extra 5 or 10 pounds. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. So, yeah.
just assume
Yeah, like
you're not
precautionary.
yeah, right.
You've been eating at the buffet.
You were on vacation. You came back overweight. You came back heavy.
There's certain crews where they're shorter and lighter than other crews, and the pilot will sit there and say like, "Oh, we could take an extra 100 pounds today."
Just
Because-
based on, so that's
and-
unique stuff that we
right.
just never have to consider on the ground, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's
Yeah.
What is your typical like max for just average call out? How much weight can you carry in a patient?
So on the cot itself, for weight and balance, it is 401 pounds.
401.
The cot itself, it's weight rated much higher than that, but because of the mounting and where I talked about the tail weight is very important, and with the patient's legs down there. So for weight and balance purposes, it's 401. Once you get past that, and we could run a little bit different weight, then we're talking about like if we have a trainee rider. So it's not just so specific as like, okay, the patient has to be 400 pounds
Right.
and that's it.
Right.
Well, depending what time of year it is, the temperature, the air density, how much fuel we have on, yeah, you might be able to take 400-pound patient and, their spouse who weighs 100 pounds.
Right.
But that's, you change months and now it's August and the air's not as dense and it's hot and the engines aren't working as well. And you have a crew on who has just eaten dinner and they're a bigger crew. And now it's like we could take a 375-pound patient and especially, okay, we're flying now to Youngstown. We have to take more fuel to get back to Cleveland.
Right.
Now it's 350. So it's very hard. Like I said, there's a hard cutoff. Patient has to be, 400 pounds or less to be on the cot for weight and balance. But after that, it wildly varies.
So-
And that even circles back to that 14 inches. I mean,
Right.
if you got somebody that's 400 pounds that's 5 foot tall, their stomach isn't fitting in
Right,
that
right, isn't-
14
right,
inches.
Yeah, and we've had that before. We've tried to load them and
Like
push them down, and it doesn't work. And you're like, oh, well, call ground truck. We're going by ground.
Blow out all your air, sir.
yeah.
Liposuction at
Well,
bedside.
Yeah. Real deep breath. Real deep breath. Real deep breath.
I heard Mike Bolin carries a stick of butter with him.
Oh no.
Spray can of Pam. But so it's like I said, it's very, very specific. And then we get into a whole different population, which is pediatrics.
Yep.
We always like to take the parent with us. Not only are there legal considerations
Sure.
of if the patient needs procedures at the hospital, now you're doing it as with actual consent versus an emergent, assumed consent
Yep.
type situation, as well as just, those of us who are parents, if our kid got hurt, we'd want to be with
You'd
our
want
kid.
to go with them, right? Yeah.
We wouldn't want to be behind the wheel of a car in that state of mind trying to drive 2 hours to Cleveland as fast as we
Absolutely not,
can.
right,
So
right.
we always try to take a parent, and that has a factor too.
We can break that even into as far as if you look at pediatric center care and the PICU and that sort of thing, it's very family centered. So it's really important to have that
Yeah.
family there to help and make those decisions and have them involved in everything. So bringing them along.
However, if you are picking up a 16-year-old football player who weighs
Yeah.
250
Right,
pounds of
exactly,
muscle,
right.
you might not be able to fit a parent, especially, if it's his equal-sized dad, in with you and take, 500, 600 pounds of weight. You might not be able to based on, again, the length you're flying, the fuel you're carrying.
right.
You might face that situation where you're like, we'd love to, but we can't.
Our delivery vessel is wildly affected by so many things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know that everybody completely appreciates that if they're not necessarily
It's definitely one of
business,
those
yeah.
intricacies you learn while you're doing
While you're
it,
doing it,
but you
yeah.
don't really understand it until you're doing it.
Right, or let's flip that around. It's like, well, last time that we had you guys come out and do a scene flight, you took the parent, but now you didn't, or what? There's
Right.
variables. It really all has to get sorted out real time. It's
Here,
not.
I'll throw another variable at you. When we have our spare aircrafts, they're not P2 pluses, so they take like 100 pounds less or something like
Less,
that.
yeah.
So I remember going to a scene in Burton where we get there and the parent wanted to come with us, and unfortunately because we were in a spare aircraft,
You got 100 less pounds to
yeah,
play with. Yeah,
we can't take you but yeah,
we
that's,
want to, right?
yeah, we'd love to take you, but unfortunately we can't. So
And that's where, typically from the hospitals, you have the weight beds, you have people who are very good at estimating a weight. We have a good sense of what the patient's going to be weighing.
Sure.
So it's very important for our EMS partners and our fire partners. When we're calling in for a patient report, we're going to be asking for a weight. And if it's a kid, we might be asking for the parent's weight too.
Sure.
And that's really important because now if we're flying from our base in Middlefield to a scene in Ashtabula with a 15-minute run time because you're far up north, we're burning a lot more fuel. We could take a lot more patient now. But if you're calling from, very close to Middlefield in Geauga County, we are lifting and we are
Setting
landing.
back down, right.
We've burned 3 minutes of fuel.
Right.
Or we have EMS and fire partners who bring patients directly to our base.
To the base, right.
Especially if it's a bad weather day where we might not be able to fly into that scene because of fog or other conditions, but we'll be able to leave the airport and fly downtown. So they'll bring patients directly to us.
Yeah.
And it's very important to kind of make that weight and actuate, not ideal body weight.
This is full actual weight, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, I'm not estimate the weight the best you can.
Right.
If the patient is similar to your size and you weigh 270, the patient's 270.
Right.
And it's easy as that. I think people put way too much thought into estimating the weight. Like if you look at a kid and the kid's the size of your child and your child weighs 40 pounds, they're
40,
pretty
50
much
pound kid, right?
they're
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much 40 pounds, and especially for weight and balance purposes, not so much medication or whatever. We're looking strictly for how much weight can we put in that helicopter, and if we could get that in our initial report and landing brief, that might affect whether the pilot drops us in that field, takes back off and flies a couple laps to burn some more fuel so we could take a parent.
You beat me to it.
Or so that we could take that patient a little bit better. So that's an important reason why we asked for the weight. And so it's, like I said, it's not so much like, well, we can't take them. Most likely we could take them. We might just have to, like I said, burn some more fuel, keep the helicopter running hot, whatever we need to do to take that patient and their family member if needed.
and burning the fuel like that too. I believe it's every gallon is 7 pounds. So
and it's a gallon a minute.
yeah,
Burn
gallon a minute. So
Don't ya?
we can get that weight down pretty
Real quick,
so,
right? Yeah. That my wife and I were driving past the hospital, and there was just a helicopter. He's just camping out there, and she's like, "What's he doing? Is he landing?" I said, "No, they have a heavy patient. They were just
Yep.
they were just chilling. They were lightening up."
Oh yeah.
But yeah, if again, mostly a pre-hospital audience. If they land and then they
Take back off. Yeah.
he's coming back. Pilot's coming back.
Yeah.
It's just you got to make weight, like you said. So
Absolutely.
But like I said, it's something that I want the pre-hospital partners to be aware of it, but also not be worried about it.
Overly worried about
the
it.
same thing with weather planning. If there's thunderstorms coming in and we've accepted it, we have a plan.
Yeah.
We have a plan, whether it's to go to different hospital than you think that we're going to, or with weight, whether it's to burn more fuel. We don't want you to sit there and oh man, this guy's big. This guy's
Sure.
370.
Or not call because of
Right.
these things. Yeah.
If you call us and you've had to use a tow truck and a crane to get a patient out of a house, yeah, we might not be flying them. But if it's an average patient and you're like, this patient looks heavy, this patient feels heavy. Give us the estimated weight and we will work it out. It's not something you have enough going on your scene in the way of patient care, in the way of taking care of the patient, stabilizing the patient. Don't worry about it. Give us the weight and we will work out the plan. That's our side of the job, and we could take care of it while you take care of the patient.
So this is an ongoing thing we have on the podcast about calling for, like, basically not in the pre-hospital world, about online med control, right? You guys have your online med control for certain things too, but to have that cognitive offloading, to have that, like, let's call the specialist, right? You guys are the specialists in Air Medevac. We're going to call you and say, this is what I have. Have you guys figure out the weight. Have you guys figure out the weather? Have you guys worry about, oh, well, I can't land there, but maybe we can divert to here and I can do a rendezvous and we'll transport the patient from there.
Yeah, totally. And that even comes to, I think we can even get into like LZ zones and that sort of thing when we're, coming into somewhere and say it's a bad accident on a highway or something like that, and prolonged entrapment, and the crew calls us for the helicopter. We get there. We're gonna do our orbits. You're gonna watch us. We do. It's required for our company. We do a high orbit and a low orbit. And what we're doing that whole time is we're not just flying around in circles just to make a show or something. But
we're here.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Look at us. Check us out. But no, we're
so we're not for the gram. You're not doing it for.
I mean,
photo op.
It depends on the situation. But yeah, but no, we're when we're up there, we're looking around. We're looking for wires, we're looking for trees, we're looking for poles, we're looking for any obstructions, anything that could be dangerous that could come into the scene. If you talk to our pilot that we worked with yesterday, Charles, fantastic pilot, he's excellent. Every pole has a wire, so
correct.
We're looking
and
around
between every two poles is a wire.
Yeah, so we're eyeballing all that, and we're making sure that LZ looks good for us to come in there, and there's going to be no issues. So that's it's nice when our EMS partners are setting up a scene that they set it up where they think it's going to be good. But if it's not, that's no big deal. We're up there. We're looking around. We'll see what we can find out, and we'll let you know.
We'll find a space, right?
This might be a better spot. Can you guys move your cones over there, or something like that? We're pretty easy going with that sort of thing. So
so building off of that, obviously on your orbits, you're going to see things differently than the guys on the ground. Conversely, things in the air resolve differently than what's on the ground. So that communication, I got to imagine, is on what everybody's seeing is huge as far as an LZ brief and whatnot.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we're coming out to a scene, that's the first thing we're doing is we're calling out. We're going to get some patient info from you, and we're going to get that LZ brief, and being able to tell us, hey, there's wires to the south of your LZ, and there's trees to the north, and that the ground's maybe semi-soft.
I would say let's talk about your case. We'll talk about the clinical portion of that case a little bit later, but let's talk about the operational in that LZ. You guys sat down in a field.
Yeah.
And
so
it was suboptimal.
Oh, so we orbited and we're looking and we're kind of on the fence. Hey, it's a cornfield. It's the spring. It's a little wet out. Is this going to be soft? And the difficulty with landing somewhere like that is if we sink, that's going to put us at risk. It's going to make it harder for us to get to the patient. And then when our pilot goes to lift, are those skids going to stick?
Going to come out, yeah.
Yeah, if they don't come out the way they should, if one comes out before the other, could cause a rollover, dynamic rollover, and then none of us are going to be able to do anything. We're not going to be able to help that patient at all. Really going to cause more harm, and
we're going to have patients.
More patients.
More patients for everybody, right?
So we're really looking at that sort of thing. But this scene that we went into, the ground was soft, and we had asked the EMS on scene to go out and check it for us, and they told us it was hard. So we're going to take your
word for it.
Yeah, we're going to take your word for it. So we did, and we landed, and when we're getting out, I looked down and I said,
wasn't quite as hard as
our skids are sinking. I think we're going to have to move. So I let our pilot know, hey, just so you know, while we were doing our orbit, I know you saw it because we talked about it.
Yeah.
Just across the street, down the road, there's a driveway. It's no poles, no wires, nothing like that.
Right.
If you can lift and reposition over there after we get our stuff and get going, it'd be perfect. And we ended up doing that, and we had a couple other hurdles with ditches and that sort of thing at that LZ coming out of there, but
Well, I mean that makes it makes a talking point is you've got to get all your medical gear and that patient back to the aircraft. That needs to be part of the decision making for where you're putting us down. Yes, it's a big ass space and you can fit a helicopter in it, right?
Right.
But
it's a little difficult to carry a patient over that ditch.
Over a ditch
or dragging them through the
a
mud.
body of water or whatever else. Or,
I've had to land in like a ball field before, and the ambulance parked on the other side of the backstop, and none of us thought of it. None of us.
Not one.
Until we get out, and we're walking there, and we're like,
hey guys.
there's no way through this
guys.
fence. There's no way through this fence.
It's like standing on the other side of the prison wall.
Right. This wasn't well thought out.
Other than passing the patient over, but yeah, it was something that none of us thought of like
simple thing.
How do you get the patient through that? How do you get the patient to us or us to the patient?
And I know you guys were busy. I don't know if your I assume you guys briefed on that after the fact, but I was listening to that particular situation when he pulled it out of the mud and he went to land over there. I'm imagining how it went down, but I know he made a radio call to the to department. They're like, there was, once he got closer to it, there were snow poles, snow sticks all the way down that road, and they had to go. He says, I can't puncture the aircraft with the. So they went and yanked him out on that.
Totally.
I remember hearing him calling. I'm like, oh crap. He's moving, and you guys are working with the with the patient on that particular call. But but even when he relocated, there was still more things that had to be done, and from that LZ perspective.
Totally.